Next time you are driving down the highway, look at the massive 18-wheeler trucks rushing past you. They are the blood cells of the global economy, moving billions of dollars of goods every single day. The natural assumption is that the people who own those trucks, the people paying for the diesel, and the people maintaining the engines are making all the money. But society has a funny way of hiding the truth in plain sight. In the ruthless world of logistics and supply chain management, the entities making the most terrifying profits do not own a single truck. They do not buy tires. They do not pay for fuel. They deal in a currency far more powerful than diesel. They deal in information, timing, and other people's money. Today on Capital Chronicles, we are going to decode the ultimate middleman empire. We are going to look at the dark art of freight arbitrage. You are about to hear the true story of how a 29-year-old warehouse worker engineered a multi-million-dollar float, manipulated the supply chain, and used a global economic crisis to buy a massive fleet of physical trucks using exactly $0 of his own capital. If you are ready to unlearn the middle-class myths about money and discover how the 1% actually operate, hit the subscribe button right now. Pay close attention, because this is a masterclass in leverage. Meet David. The year was 2020. David was 29 years old, working 50-hour weeks as a warehouse dispatcher in New Jersey. His job was chaotic. He stood on the loading docks, screaming into his radio, trying to coordinate trucks to pick up freight. He saw the sheer desperation in the eyes of corporate logistics managers when they couldn't find available trucks. And he saw the frustration of independent truck drivers who couldn't find consistent, high-paying routes. David realized something profound. The market was highly fragmented. The giant retail corporations had millions of dollars, but no flexibility. The independent truckers had the equipment, but no financial stability. David decided he was no longer going to be a warehouse worker. He was going to become the bridge. He quit his job and registered a company, Vanguard Logistics. No trucks, no warehouses, just a laptop, a cell phone, and a deep understanding of capital appropriation. The holiday season was approaching, and major retailers were panicking about a looming capacity shortage. David targeted a massive national electronics retailer. He didn't just offer to find them a few trucks. He walked into their corporate office and pitched absolute certainty. He told the executives, "The spot market is going to crash this winter. You will have millions of dollars of inventory stranded at the ports. I will guarantee you 100% dedicated freight capacity for the entire fourth quarter. But to lock in my fleet, I require a priority capacity retainer. $1 million wired up front today." Because the retail executives were terrified of empty shelves during the biggest shopping season of the year, and because David projected the authority of a massive logistics firm, they signed the contract. They wired $1 million into the newly opened bank account of Vanguard Logistics. Let's freeze this moment. David has $1 million in cold, hard cash. He does not own a steering wheel. He is playing the ultimate game of capital appropriation. He secured the capital before he secured the product. Now he needed the trucks. David went to the digital load boards and started calling independent owner-operators. These are guys who own their own trucks and live paycheck to paycheck. David offered them great, consistent routes, moving electronics, but he offered them on his terms. He said, "I will give you these premium dedicated lanes, but my corporate policy dictates net 60 payment terms. This means the truck driver delivers the freight today, but Vanguard Logistics does not pay them for 2 entire months." Desperate for the steady work, the independent truckers agreed. Let us look at David's financial matrix. He has $1 million sitting in his account from the retailer. The truckers are moving the freight. The retailer is happy. But David doesn't have to pay the truckers their $800,000 for 60 days. This is the float. For 2 months, David legally controls $1 million that is not his. It is an interest-free loan provided by the fear of the retailer and the desperation of the truck drivers. If you think this strategy is brilliant, type "master leverage" in the comments right now. If you think it is unethical to make the drivers wait, type "unethical." I want to see where your moral compass aligns with your financial ambition. Go ahead, drop a comment. Most people would take that $1 million, pay themselves a massive salary, and try to live the high life. That is how amateurs go to prison. David took the entire float and weaponized it. He used the cash to hire a massive team of aggressive sales brokers. He ran high-end B2B marketing campaigns targeting other desperate corporations. Because his business was completely funded by his first client's money, he could scale infinitely. Within a year, David was securing contracts with food distributors, auto parts manufacturers, and clothing brands. He was managing a float of over $5 million. He was a phantom logistics baron, controlling thousands of shipments across the country, fueled entirely by the time delay between his receivables and his payables. But the laws of financial gravity dictate that extreme leverage eventually encounters extreme volatility. It was the spring of 2022. A sudden global geopolitical conflict sent shockwaves through the energy markets. The price of diesel fuel literally doubled in a matter of weeks. It was an industry-wide massacre. The independent truck drivers, who were already waiting 60 days for David's payments, suddenly could not afford to fill up their gas tanks. They revolted. Thousands of drivers called Vanguard Logistics and demanded immediate fuel surcharges and cash on delivery. They refused to move a single pallet of goods until they were paid up front. David's ghost fleet vanished overnight. He was staring at the abyss. He had millions of dollars of electronics, food, and auto parts sitting on loading docks across America. If the freight didn't move within 48 hours, he would be in breach of dozens of corporate contracts. The penalty clauses would trigger $10 million in fines. The corporations would sue him for fraud. The government would freeze his accounts. Put yourself in David's shoes right now. You are a middleman with no trucks. The drivers are striking. The corporations are calling their lawyers. But you still have $5 million of the float sitting in your bank account. How do you survive? Tell me your move in the comments. Let's see who can think clearly under fire. David did not fold. He looked at his $5 million float and realized that the middleman game was over. It was time to buy reality. He knew that while the independent drivers were striking, mid-sized trucking companies were also drowning in debt because of the fuel crisis. They had the trucks, they had the employed drivers, but they couldn't service their bank loans. David found a distressed regional trucking company in Pennsylvania
that owned a physical fleet of 50 semi-trucks. They were 2 weeks away from bankruptcy. David walked into the owner's office. He didn't ask for a loan. He didn't negotiate freight rates. He slammed a contract on the desk.
He used $4 million of his massive cash float to buy a controlling 80% stake in the trucking company on the spot, assuming all their debt. He injected instant liquidity into their payroll and fuel accounts. Within 24 hours, David was no longer a ghost broker. He was the owner of 50 physical semi-trucks and a roster of employed, salaried drivers. He immediately dispatched his newly acquired fleet to the loading docks of his corporate clients. The freight moved. The electronics hit the shelves. The breach of contract was avoided. Then David sent a masterfully crafted press release to his corporate clients. He wrote, "To ensure absolute reliability in this volatile energy market, Vanguard Logistics has officially transitioned from a brokerage model to an asset-based carrier. We now own our fleet to guarantee your supply chain." The corporate executives didn't care about the near miss. They only cared that their freight was moving while their competitors were paralyzed. They loved the new asset-based Vanguard Logistics and signed longer, more lucrative contracts. David had achieved the ultimate financial alchemy. He used the corporation's fear to generate a massive cash float. He used the delay in driver payments to build an empire. And when a global crisis threatened to destroy his illusion, he used that exact cash float to buy a real physical asset that saved his life. He bought a trucking company using the money of the people whose freight he was supposed to move. Today, Vanguard Logistics is a $100 million powerhouse, owning hundreds of trucks. David, the former warehouse dispatcher, sits in a corner office. He didn't build his wealth by saving money from a paycheck. He built it by understanding that capital is fluid. This is the untold secret of the empire builders. They do not use their own money to buy assets. They orchestrate the flow of commerce. They collect cash on day 1, they push their liabilities to day 60, and they use the massive pool of capital in the middle to conquer their industry. If this deep dive into logistics arbitrage completely rewired how you think about business and wealth, hit the like button. Share this documentary with an entrepreneur who is still trying to save their way to the top. They need to learn how to master the float. And if you want to discover the next hidden blueprint of the 1%, make sure you are subscribed to Capital Chronicles. Turn on notifications so you don't miss our next revelation. Stop waiting for capital and start appropriating it. I will see you in the next one.